Alrighty. This is the second lesson in a series of asking research questions. In my first lesson, I focused on what questions were in, framing thinking, and really focused on learning the difference between open and closed. This was what we would have covered in the first lesson, and you have the table. In this lesson, I'm working with students on applying what they know about questioning with what they're learning in social studies and ELA class to help them formulate their own research questions and identifying the parts that go into making a good research question. My essential question, like everyone's, is what makes a good research question? The goal for the end of this lesson is that students will be able to write or at least choose their own question to guide their research. Our objectives are brainstorming. We're going to have a brainstorming section while looking at artifacts having to do with Mayflower Compact. They're going to be able to differentiate between open and closed questions and maybe come up with some on their own and identify what makes for better research questions. Setting the stage, there's two areas of the library that we'll be using. A sitting on the floor story area around a whiteboard and work tables for group work when they're examining the artifacts and brainstorming, where they can also see the whiteboard. Materials, whiteboard with agenda and vocab. You have copies of those. And a T-chart for open and closed questions. My question word anchor chart, which you also have. That should be hanging somewhere in the library. Sticky notes, a lot of sticky notes. Some that already have questions on them, some that are blank, and some in a different color to use for the exit tickets so they do not get confused. Or that the teacher doesn't then get confused when they go back to do the assessment. Laminated artifacts that I got from the Pilgrim Hall Museum, and I think one came from the Library of Congress. Paper and markers for brainstorming, and if possible, like I would have up on that screen the text of the Mayflower Compact with the names of the signers. I've attempted to be thoughtful here in choosing developmentally appropriate learning experiences. I looked at questioning formulation technique, and I thought that worked really well. Getting third graders to work together because they are so social, that brainstorming in coming up with and developing their own questions and improving on their own questions was useful. I also tried to do some thoughtful movement because third graders can't sit for as long as I'd like to sit for. Expectations are that students come and they know a little bit about the Mayflower Compact already from social studies class, and that they remember what we did last week in library class. In a real life situation, I would allocate more time than I'm going to go over with the independent practice and the class activities that I do with the kids. Those would take a lot of time with third graders, and I know that I have to pay particular attention to maintaining their attention and momentum with transitions, huge with third graders. And that's my overview. Okay. So I would go to the door, but stay in camera, and welcome the third graders in and say, put your books in the book drop, any book you want to renew, put on my desk. I want to see walking feet and quiet voices, and sit in our story area where you can see the whiteboard. And then we are going to go over today's agenda. What is our essential question for today? What makes a good research question? We're going to think about what we remembered from last class and work with what we know and try to come up with some good research questions. Our vocab words for today, you have them: Mayflower Compact, Artifact, Research, and Brainstorming. While we get settled here, who can share something that they remember from social studies class about what they know about the Pilgrims or the Mayflower Compact? That's to reassess what they have come to know. Today we're going to do a lot of practice to become great questioners. Who can tell me something about open questions? Who can tell me something about closed questions? Who can give me an example of a closed question? Molly, could you give me an example of a closed question?
Who wrote the Mayflower Compact?
Who? I'd have Molly come up and put that. What kind of question is that, Molly?
Closed.
Closed. Okay, Jody, can you give me an open question?
Why did they write the Mayflower Compact?
Excellent. And where does that go?
Under open.
Excellent. So let's look at some other questions and see where they go. And then I would have them come up one at a time. How many pilgrims? Don't think about answering these questions. Just think about whether they're open or closed. How many pilgrims were born on the voyage over? Is that open or closed? Molly.
Closed.
Excellent. Was the journey to the colonies an easy one?
Oh man, what if I get it
Chelsea.
wrong? Open.
There's no mistake.
Open.
Was the journey to the colonies an easy one? How do we answer that? How do we
Yes or
answer that?
no?
Okay. No, it's closed. Wait. Yes.
Are we sure?
But is it up for interpretation? I'm gonna be the difficult student.
You're
The
going to
black
be
sheep.
difficult. Yes. Molly, could we help her out? How would we answer a question like this?
With a yes or a no.
Okay, so Chelsea, what does that make
That
it?
makes it a closed question.
Woo! So then, Chelsea, what made the journey difficult? Is that open or closed?
Ooh. What made it difficult?
Could you answer that in like a short few words, or do you need a lot to explain that?
I think it would make it it's closed. I think it's closed. You're wrong again. Well, that's also,
Think about it.
okay, open. Because there were a lot of factors. Why it was
Excellent.
difficult.
There are a lot of things that go into answering a question like that. Jody, did the pilgrims land where they expected to?
That's a closed question.
Definitely, because what's the answer to that? Yes or no, or?
No.
Yeah, well, we don't have the word. Okay, do you want to try again, Chelsea?
Sure.
What happened during the pilgrims' first winter?
What happened during the Pilgrims' first winter?
It's a tough one.
That is a tough one. I'm gonna say closed. Because
Closed?
you can answer it.
This is a little different than
Maybe not.
thick and thin. Can this be answered with yes, no, or a short answer, or is it going to take a long answer?
It's going.
Could you answer it in, is there only one way to answer it?
No. So it's an open question.
Excellent. Excellent. You guys did a great job. Now look at these. I look at these questions, and the closed questions make me feel like I answer them really quickly and I can't really do much work and can't really say much more about them. But the open questions really get my brain churning and really make me think about all different things that I can find out about. So, what do you think would work better for research? Do you want a quick answer that you don't have much to talk about, or do you want something that you can really dig into?
A long answer.
Good, Molly. So now I'm going to have the students break up onto their work tables. We have 4 tables out. Students will get into groups of 4. That's as many as we have. And you're going to look at these artifacts and really examine them. And then we're going to work together to brainstorm a whole list of questions. Walking feet to the tables. This is where I would break and have them working, looking at their artifacts, brainstorming with markers and hopefully larger paper than this. One person would be the note taker for each group, and as they were working, I would walk around and cue and prompt as needed, help where needed. Before they started brainstorming, I would say, you're going to look at this artifact, and you're going to come up with as many questions as you can. But there are some rules to brainstorming. I want you to write down as many questions as you possibly can. Every question about your artifact is a valid and acceptable question, and you need to work together. There are some don'ts. Don't try to answer the questions. Don't try to discuss answers to the questions. Just write the questions. No judgment, just write them down. If you come up with something that sounds more like a statement, let's see if we can turn it into a question. For example, if I was looking at this and I said, I don't think this painting was done at the time of the signing, that's a statement, that's not a question. We can turn that into any number of questions. We can say, when was this painting created? How can I tell that this wasn't created at the time of the signing of the Mayflower Compact? Try to think about changing some of those statements into questions. And then we break and they do the independent practice. After 4 or 5 minutes, when it looks like most of the group has gotten what they needed to get done. Eyes up, markers down. Now, you're going to look through your list of questions and decide which of them are open and which of them are closed. Passing out sticky notes to each table. I want you to choose any one question from your list and come and decide and put it up on the board. I'd walk through any of them who needed help. If there was time, they could do multiple questions. If they did one open, I'd ask them to try to find one that was closed or one closed and try to do one that was open. Look at all these good questions you guys came up with. That was a great effort. Now I need you to return to your work tables. And we need to wrap up for the day. So, all these questions that we came up with, what goes into making a good research question? What do you think? What kind of question would you like to use for your research? Now I want you to think a little bit about what you already know about the Mayflower Compact and what you know about questions, and you're going to write your own question. Before you leave today, take a blue sticky note, make sure your name is in the corner of your sticky note so I know whose sticky note belongs to who. And see if you can come up with a question. I know that you can do it. A question that can at least start your research. Fill it out, stick it on the board, find a book to check out, make sure your chairs are pushed in, and have a nice day. Oh, and I did it under 15. All right, I'm done.
Okay. Yay.